Well, President Trump is demanding the Department of Justice investigate the FBI's probe of his campaign's ties to Russia. He wants to know if the department or the FBI surveilled his 2016 presidential campaign, and if so, whether the Obama administration was behind the investigation. With more on this now, we're joined by Brooklyn Law School professor Miriam Baer. She is a former Assistant U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York. Thank you so much for joining us, Miriam.
Hi.
So how odd or unprecedented is this for a president to tweet out a demand to, the director of an ongoing probe? Here's a suggestion. This is where you should focus your attention.
First of all, it's obviously, completely unprecedented, right. And it isn't even here's a suggestion, right? The way the tweet was written yesterday, it effectively said, I demand or I will demand that you do this.
Right.
So this is goes against what many of us talk about, certainly scholars talk about, norms of independence. There's this notion that, okay, even though you're the president of the United States, even though you're the chief executive, when it comes to our law enforcement agencies, there's kind of a hands-off view, particularly with regard to individual investigations. Sure, the president shapes policy. It's the president. He's allowed to decide who he wants to be his attorney general, right? But that's different from saying, I want you to investigate this. Then on top of that, I want you to investigate this thing that relates to the investigation of me. So this is as unprecedented as you get, and then add all that, it's all in Twitter. So that of course adds this new gloss.
Completely. So in that tweet he says, I will officially be making this request come Monday, today. But Rod Rosenstein didn't waste any time and basically said, look, there's an ongoing probe. We're going to expand it to accommodate your request.
And I think that's a really astute move on Rod Rosenstein's part, right? Because what it does is it ratchets down the volume immediately. Basically, Rosenstein is saying, oh, of course, if there was surveillance for the wrong reasons, for inappropriate purposes, to somehow interfere with someone's campaign, by all means, we should know that. And hey, we happen to already have a probe ongoing by the Inspector General. So by all means, should the Inspector General want to look into this, he should. And once he says that, right, it's really hard for President Trump to complain anymore, right? He got what he wanted. The Inspector General's going to look at this. And if there's anything to it, then maybe we'll find out. If there isn't, now what you've done is you've neutralized the situation. You're no longer and in fact, you avoid any kind of a shouting match, which would be something that Rod Rosenstein doesn't want to get involved, right? Rod Rosenstein doesn't want to start fighting President Trump on Twitter or anywhere else. And so this is a very, very astute move on Rod Rosenstein's part.
Already taking care of it, sir, sort of.
There you go.
So a lot of people have pointed out, though, that, the president's Twitter storm over the weekend started after there was an article printed about his son, Don Jr., another Trump Tower meeting. This time it was with a Gulf emissary who offered to help them with the election, with the 2016 election. Why is the special counsel's investigation interested in this meeting?
Right. So to the extent that the special counsel is looking at this meeting, it's important to think back to the appointment letter that actually from Rod Rosenstein to Robert Mueller that says, here's what your job is, special counsel. And that appointment letter says, investigate all links between the campaign of Donald Trump and Russia, right? So here's the thing. That doesn't mean you only investigate meetings in which a Russian person happened to be there. Right? We don't know everything there is to know about this second meeting. But what we do know certainly would raise any suspicion of any investigator or cause any investigator to say, yeah, I want to follow this up and learn more about it, because that second meeting, first of all, occurred, if I'm understanding correctly, about a month or two after the first meeting, the meeting that we do know about that did involve people who were connected with Russia or in fact Russian. And in fact, this second meeting also was about helping the Trump campaign and also involved someone who knew about social media, which of course we already know Russia was interested in social media manipulation. So there's all sorts of reasons to be interested in this this second meeting and ask, are the people who attended this second meeting, were they in any way acting on Russia's behalf? Were they connected to people who were acting on Russia's behalf? Were they planning to report back to people who were acting on Russia's behalf? There's plenty of reasons to look at that meeting and want to know more about it, because it's not by itself, it may not be all that important, but if it's part of a larger constellation of dots, we want to find all the dots.
Right. So, meantime, the president's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, has been doing his job. He's on TV, and he talked about the fact that he believed that this whole investigation could be wrapped up by September if the president was willing to sit down and talk with investigators. I know some people might think Rudy Giuliani is a bit of a loose cannon, but he doesn't say things by accident, I don't think. And he's not just speaking for the president; he's speaking to an audience. So if you keep that in mind, what's the strategy here? Is he sort of trying to telecast or broadcast something to Mueller and the investigators?
Right. So we don't really know what conversations he's had with either Robert Mueller or the various members of the special counsel's team.
Right.
It is certainly, you could say, there's a smart move in there in saying September 1st, only in that it creates an anchoring effect, right? So whether, in fact, the special counsel's office said anything about September 1st, now you have the press saying September 1st.
Right.
And now the audience, the public, hears the words September 1st, September 1st, September 1st. So suddenly we've now created this new anchor, September 1st.
Right.
Now that may not be true, it may not be fully accurate, but nevertheless it's this new anchor and it has some meaning, and it's going to be something that we hear going forward. Right. And presumably members of the president's team will now echo it, and even the president himself, one might not be surprised to see either today or tomorrow or the day afterwards, some mention of, well, this will all be wrapped up in September in a tweet. Or why does it have to wait till September? You could even imagine that.
Right.
You anchor it September, and now you start to say, why do we have to wait till September? So that's certainly a possibility.
But is that an indication that perhaps the president wants to sit down and talk to the special counsel? I know there have been negotiations, and I know that I'm sure the special counsel would want some sort of open-ended interviewing process, and Rudy Giuliani, I'm sure, is trying, and the rest of his team of lawyers are trying to negotiate something different. But to say, hey, if the president's willing to sit down, this should all be done and over with, is that a suggestion that they're looking to the president to have him sit down?
I would say no.
Okay.
First of all, the president always likes to say that he's interested in sitting down.
Right.
He's said that publicly. That doesn't mean that he really wants to sit down for any type of interview of any substance. Yeah. And certainly I'm sure his lawyers have advised him of the various pitfalls of sitting down with Robert Mueller. So I don't think we should take that at all. I think it's that he would like this thing to wrap up. And so by saying September 1st or having Mr. Giuliani say September 1st, he's already putting this idea in the mind of the public that, wow, this whole thing could wrap up, and he wants to push that narrative.
And if it doesn't, boy, are they dragging it out.
Right, it will be your fault. You guys, you investigators, you're making this thing drag out. Right, exactly.
Miriam Baer, thank you very much.
Thank you.